Larry, it's great to have you with us today. I think your story is a fascinating one, and in just the few minutes we have, I do want to find out exactly what your operation was with the FBI and the Weather Underground. First of all, you're a Vietnam veteran, and in some way you were then associated with the FBI and working with them. Let me ask you, cut to the chase and ask you about the Weather Underground. We've heard a lot about them, but I think for people who were not children of the 60s, that may be a whole new idea for them. Explain who the Weather Underground were in the 60s and 70s.
Well, they were probably the first domestic terrorist organization to begin operating here in the United States, at least to the extent that they intended to try to overthrow the government. And they placed bombs in several buildings and police stations. Brian McDonald was a sergeant in San Francisco. He was killed, and several police officers were injured when they put a bomb in the New York Police Headquarters building.
Okay, I think this is a lot of history that we probably have not really been taught too much in our schools these days, but this was before the idea of homegrown terrorism really came to fruition as we know it now, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, and it was grew out of the anti-war movement back in the 70s, and I think the big deal today is that Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, as an example, are involved in education, and they have contacts in the White House. They're very good friends with Obama.
Yeah, now we've heard of that connection. I do want to get to that, but let me just back up slightly. You worked with the FBI as the only successful man to infiltrate the Weather Underground. How did that even come about?
Well, I had gotten out of the Army and was attending the University of Cincinnati when the weatherman approached me and asked me to join the group. I went to the police department and then to the FBI to tell them about, what was going on, and ultimately, when the group went underground, they kicked a lot of people out, and I was the only one to survive. So I mean, that's the distinction that I have, is that I'm the only one that's successfully infiltrated the Weather Underground.
And you supplied the FBI with information then, correct?
Yes, the whole time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, how big was that organization at the time, the Weather Underground?
Oh, I would estimate that at the most there was maybe 500 people across the country, and of that there probably was only maybe 250 of them that were hardcore members. I mean, when I say hardcore, I'm talking about the ones that would place the bombs. Kathy Bodine and her husband were arrested in the Brinks armored truck robbery in New York. There was 2 policemen and a guard that was killed in that robbery. So, I mean, they were extremely violent. And they had connections with the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Russians. So, I mean, this was a group to take seriously.
Now,
and the FBI did.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, and the FBI did.
Now, with a group that size, and we have heard Bill Ayers mentioned quite often, he's a professor right now, is he not, at this point?
Well, he's retired, but yes, he was a professor at the University of Illinois.
And I know that some have said that his involvement certainly should have had a little bit more investigation on. Did you know Bill Ayers at that point?
Oh yes, I spent a lot of time with Bill and several other of the leadership people. The Weathermen were a paramilitary organization, so you got instructions on what you were supposed to be doing, and they expected you to follow those instructions. And Bill was one of the founders of the organization, the Weather Underground. So Bill was around a lot.
Now, that organization doesn't really function anymore, is that right?
Well, as the Weather Underground, it no longer exists. But Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn and several others are still very active in politics and in stirring up trouble. Bernadine and Bill have been very closely connected to the Occupy Wall Street movement. They've been involved with Code Pink and have been over to Egypt and have been involved in problems that have existed in the, I guess it's the Gaza Strip. They were part of that organization that tried to run the blockade and bring that ship in from Turkey.
Okay, well, that certainly brings us up to date with the group may be gone, but the influence and a lot of the key people are still there even after all these decades. In the latest discussions that we've had, a lot of people have said that you know, President Obama, if he's going to be doing using some sort of executive privilege, and some have said virtually attempting anyway to pass his own laws regarding gun control after the Newtown, Connecticut unfortunate situation and massacre that happened there. Some people have said that's exactly what Hitler and Stalin did, but you're saying that there's more of a tie-in to people like who are friends of President Obama who would have him do something similar that are influencing him today. Have I stated that correctly?
Yes, that's my belief. He was, during the election in 2008, he said that Bill Ayers was merely somebody in the neighborhood, but they served on two boards together. One of them was the Annenberg Challenge, in which $100 million was distributed to various education programs in Chicago. Bill Ayers had acquired those funds and then had Barack Obama appointed as chairman. So, I mean, the ties, they shared an office in an office building in Chicago for 3 years. And why Barack Obama would deny having that contact with him is difficult to understand.
What is your fear right now when you see all of these pieces, some of them 4 decades or more ago, that seem to be kind of somewhat coalescing and coming together, having an influence on our national policy? What are the concerns that you have right now?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the educational system. I think the Weathermen, after the group was broke up, so many of them became involved in the education system. I mean, Mark Rudd is a professor in Arizona, Howie Mottinger's in South Carolina, Bill and Bernadine are in Chicago. She teaches at Northwestern University, and he taught at the University of Illinois. And so there's been 3 or 4 generations of people who have been influenced by what the Weatherman philosophy is, and basically that's the destruction of this country. And I believe that Barack Obama is part of that. He's been groomed to be where he is and doing what he's doing. And I mean, when he's decided he wants something, he has no qualms to go around the Congress and instill something or install something through executive order.
Do you think your concerns are being heard on a national scale at this point?
I think in regards to the Second Amendment, yes. I mean, it's really got people riled up, and you know, gun sales are way up, and I think it shows that people in this country are not about ready to give up their right to bear arms. But you know, what about the national debt? I mean, Barack Obama says that we don't have a problem economically, and this country's just about owned by the Chinese. If I would have told you 30 years ago that the Chinese would be holding so much of our debt, and that we would be so far in debt, you know, people wouldn't have believed it. But yet it's true. I mean, $16 trillion. You know, I can't imagine 16 million, let alone 16 trillion.
What is the best way of voicing your concerns at this point? Are you being listened to? You may be mentioning it, but are people really hearing what you're having to say, do you think, these days?
Well, you know, I think so. I make it a point to try to do every interview that I'm offered. And I think there's people out there that are taking note of what I have to say and are starting to put the pieces together. But I mean, it's going to take all of us resisting what's going on in order to protect and defend our rights. The Second Amendment is one that the Obama administration is attacking, but also the First Amendment. He wants to take radio stations and TV stations like yours off the air because you don't follow his line and his philosophy. He ignores Fox News. He acts like they don't exist, and refers to them as they're not really a news station. Well, I'm sorry, they are, and maybe you don't like what they're saying, but you know, I don't always like what I hear on the mainstream media,
Yeah.
but I'm not about ready to try to get them turned off.
Larry, let me ask you this: if this particular scenario doesn't play out in the way you think it should, briefly, what are your concerns about the direction of the nation?
Well, I'm afraid that we're going to wind up in bankruptcy, and I mean, we've already, you know, amassed such a tremendous debt that it's going to take generations to pay it off. And I think we need to get, you know, our finances under control. And I think we got to be thinking about limiting the size of government. You know, the government we shouldn't be afraid of the government. The government should be afraid of us. It's there to serve us, and it's not there as Big Brother to coddle us from cradle to grave. And that's what the founding fathers intended, and that's what I hope will continue to exist long after I'm gone.
Larry Grathwohl, thanks for being with us today on Focus Today.
More than welcome. Thank you.